Ross Tucker, how you been, Pally?
I am fantastic, Shek. Always good to talk with you. And yes, I love that Mike Tomlin called it the state championship. He said we're representing the Whippeal, which I absolutely love. You know, everybody in
Mm-hmm.
District 7 of Pennsylvania will love that. He got the Breezewood part wrong, though. I have long said that they should make a special exemption. This game should be at Beaver Stadium at
Agree.
Penn State. It's right in the middle of the state. If you ever go to Penn State, half the kids are from Western PA, half the kids from Eastern PA, tons of Steelers fans, tons of Eagles. They would sell that place out in a second. 110,000 people. It should be just like Army Navy or just like the SEC championship game where half the stadium is wearing black and gold, half the stadium is wearing green, whether that's Kelly green or midnight green. My only concern about that is I can see there being some stuff going on outside the stadium. I can see some fisticuffs. If there was half Steelers, half Eagles fans, I don't know what that dividing line would be like in the stadium or maybe even outside the stadium.
The Steelers fans would win, of course, because we would just be able to beat them up with all our Lombardi trophies. The Eagles just have the one to pass around among their entire fighting crew there. So advantage black and gold on that one. Let's jump into it though. Oh, but I do have to say at the very top there, of course, make sure you're subscribed. If you aren't, you're a loon. If you're a football fan and you ain't listening to Ross Tucker's thoughts on football, make sure you're subscribing to all his great work already out there with his week 15 picks with Fezzik. I've said it before when I catch you on the radio here and there calling Army Navy and otherwise, but now and calling Eagles preseason games and all of that, you've taken the steps and all the rest of it, but you really are as a standout in the booth calling the action. Your passion for the game is obvious, your knowledge as well, but you really do add something special to the broadcast. So make sure you're checking out Ross Tucker with that. But let's talk about these Eagles here. And like I say, football season is short. After all, it does feel like forever. I mean, it feels short that like, man, it's already December and we're into the last third of everything. But it also, Jordan Love hurting his knee against the Eagles in Rio feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
And it felt like Sirianni taunting Eagles fans after a win feels forever ago. And then they righted the ship. But now here we go again with melodrama and A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts and all the rest of it, given the evidence we had a year ago with things just falling apart in the final third of the season. How concerned are you about the Eagles?
Well, it's interesting because, first of all, I think they fell apart last year primarily because they were very deficient at the two coordinator positions. Offensive coordinator,
Hmm.
defensive coordinator. They fired their guy midway through the year on defense to give it to Matt Patricia. It was kind of a disaster and from a coaching standpoint last year. That was my belief as to the biggest reason for their downfall at the end of the season. As it relates to this week, it's so interesting because after AJ Brown's comments after the game, where he was asked where they need to improve, he said passing, and they do. I mean, you watch them. It's actually remarkable for a team to win 9 games in a row, most of which in somewhat convincing fashion, without really firing on all cylinders in the passing game. It's super impressive, but their defense has been the best in the NFL since the bye. Their running game has been the best in the NFL since the bye. And Jalen Hurts does enough, whether it's with his arm or his legs or whatever. He's only had turnovers in one of those 9 games. That actually might be the problem, Shek, is there are open receivers to throw it to. And it's like he either doesn't see them or isn't 100% sure he wants to try it. He's really, I think, cautious and aware of not turning it over. And by the way, they've won all of those games because of that. So I was not feeling the Eagles based on A.J. Brown's comments after the game. What's interesting to me is that Brandon Graham then on a show on Monday night on sports radio WIP in Philadelphia, which is probably as impactful of a sports talk radio station as there is in the country in terms of the influence it has on the fan base and the teams. Like the
Well, like
teams.
you and I have talked about, I don't think that's a great thing. I know that the radio station and the local press loves to pat themselves on the back for having outsized influence. That's not good. You're scaring people out of town. Viable players don't want to be in Philly. Some percentage of them are like, man, too tough here. Let me go out to LA or California where I won't be under the
Well,
white
there's
hot lights so
reports that
often.
that's how Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson felt, and that worked out great for the Eagles because they didn't trade for either one of them then, and they stuck with Hurts. But no, I think your point's well taken. But what's interesting is because of what Brandon Graham said about, those guys used to be friends and blah, 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 and then he apologized on Tuesday morning. I almost think, Shek, he took it to another level where it might end up being a positive for the Eagles. So stay with me
Hmm.
on this. If you have AJ Brown say what he says, they probably let it go and move forward and try to get better in the passing game. But there might be stuff lingering. When Brandon Graham comes out and says what he said, now Sirianni, he has to address it at the team meeting. Brandon Graham has to apologize to the whole team like he's done publicly now. And you wonder if then AJ Brown says something or Hurts says something. And in other words, there's not a better term for this, but you almost wonder if they have like a come to Jesus meeting now as a result of these comments that are out there. And if it kind of galvanizes the team, I guess we'll find out Sunday, right? I don't think it'll be a normal game for the Eagles. I think they'll either come out like gangbusters and that this moment will galvanize them, or it could go the opposite way where there really are issues and you see it play itself out in a home game. Crowd starts booing early, which they do every game because the Eagles don't score in the first quarter. So the crowd boos every game, every home game, because they haven't scored in the first quarter like hardly all year. So I'll be very curious to see whether this is a galvanizing moment that they rally around or the opposite. None of us really know. And if you say you're lying.
Well, it's very funny that you go at it from that angle because I wanted to get pseudo conspiratorial and all of that and play a new game I just came up with called Thing or Not a Thing. And is it influenced by the upcoming release of a new Fantastic Four movie? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But okay, I was wondering about that because if memory serves correctly, anecdotally, AJ Brown has made noise before, and it always results in him getting more targets. And so, is him doing that a thing? Is he calculated in bringing that up? And I know he doesn't have Brandon Graham, knowing Brandon Graham's going to support that, but I guess does AJ Brown bring that up? Do you buy that there's a rift between he and Jalen Hurts on like a personal level, and that could
No,
impact things and all the rest of it? Is
no,
this all a thing?
I don't believe I'm not really sure what Brandon was talking about or if that came out the way he wanted it to, because Sirianni said on Tuesday, those guys have lunch together almost every day. Like
Hmm.
there's not some beef, behind the scenes personally that we don't know about. I think AJ Brown is fantastic. Like I would say he's one of the rare guys, Shek, that was much better than even I thought he would be. So the Eagles
Hmm.
traded for him. I thought he was a good player, for the Titans. Watching him every week, he's fantastic. I mean, there's a debate in Philly. If you ask Saquon Barkley, Saquon would say AJ Brown's the best player on the team. If you ask AJ Brown, he would say Saquon Barkley's the best player on the planet. There's like a love affair going on, right? Right. But the point is there's a very real debate as to which guy is better. And I think AJ Brown was open several times against the Panthers for touchdowns and was not throwing the ball. And while I don't care for the way he went about it after the game, I will tell you it can't be easy to be a receiver. I mean, you're by far the most dependent position I'm aware of
Hmm.
in professional sports. Okay. Number one, you need the coordinator to call a pass. Number two, you need him to call a pass in which you're like the first read or maybe second read. Number three, then you need the offensive line to protect. Number four, you need the quarterback to decide to throw you the ball. Number 5, he has to actually throw you the ball. It has to be a good pass. We didn't even get into the coverage. We didn't even get into the coverage. The defensive coordinator can say, you know what? No, we're bracketing him. We're playing press man with the safety over the top. Like, you need a ridiculous amount of things to go your way to catch a pass as a receiver, which, by the way, incidentally, makes like what Jamar Chase is doing and Joe Burrow all the more impressive. Although maybe not, because the Bengals have just decided we're just going to throw the ball to Chase every play, and Joe Burrow said we're just going to throw the ball to Chase every play. So they've eliminated like the first 4 on the list. You know what I mean?
Yes, he has got, Jamar Chase, with the help of Joe Burrow, seems to have set him up, maybe at the expense of T. Higgins, for a Juan Soto level type deal here. I mean, like a Jamar Chase's import to that team, although they are a losing team, is fascinating.
But I think it's funny too, Shek. You'll appreciate this. Certain teams get to a point where they're like, okay, we're not going to do anything in the playoffs. We know that. What can we do? I'm convinced the Raiders have decided the rest of this season is about Brock Bowers getting all the records. All the records. Like they're not good. They're not going anywhere. Maybe they'll win one more game. What do we have that our fans can be excited about, or that our fans can talk about? Brock Bowers setting records, leading the NFL in receptions. Okay, fine. Just throw him the ball every play. Who cares? Like that'll be our thing. The Bengals, it's like Jamar Chase, which incidentally is weird given that he's not under a long-term contract. But I think the Bengals are like, you know what? Let's give Chase the Triple Crown and hope that that convinces him that he should want to stay here for less money than maybe he could get elsewhere, because we'll throw him the ball this much. I don't know what the thought process is, but I do find it interesting when teams that are not going anywhere, all of a sudden, like, it seems like the focus becomes on the statistics for one individual.
It's weird too, because you talk about, the difficulty of being a receiver. Jamar Chase is, let's say, I mean, statistically, this is supported him being the number 1 receiver in football. As I've said for a number of years now, there's not any evidence that you need a high-end number 1 to win the Super Bowl. And Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are kind of proving that right now. And then it creates the question of, do you have to have A.J. Brown thriving in order to make a deep run if you're the Eagles? I was on your show a couple of weeks ago. We talked about Jenga pieces. If you remove that guy, the whole thing's going to implode. I think it's fascinating that the Eagles have the offensive player of the year and the defensive player of the year. I know Myles Garrett acts like he wins it when he gets a sack on Russell Wilson against the Steelers, but maybe it's going to be TJ. Well, I think it's Jalen Carter is who the defensive player of the year is, and potentially the Eagles Jenga piece, right? I mean, who removed Jalen Carter from that mix? That the Eagles defense has
that would hurt. He's
now.
Fantastic. This guy Zach Bond has been fantastic.
Yeah, he has been as well. Right.
And I think it's important to ask you this going into this game. I was thinking on some level offensively that Pickens was a Jenga piece for the Steelers.
I kind of think he is. I was going to ask
you, but they scored these amount of points against the Browns without him, right?
Yeah. Well, that's my question. Can the Steelers, minus the one viable target they have at wide receiver? I mean, Mike Williams, he did make a splendid catch. That's what Mike Williams does. But to your point,
like,
can they win in Philly without George Pickens?
Right. Like, if you're playing the Steelers, Vic Fangio, okay, 8 o'clock's the team meeting. Then you break up into sides of the ball. At 8:30 on Wednesday, if the Steelers were healthy, the first thing Vic Fangio would talk about would be George Pickens. We're not letting this guy beat us for big plays. We're not letting this guy beat us over the top, which I think, by the way, would make it a bad look for the Eagles to lose, right? Like, you can't lose when the other team. That would be like the Eagles not having A.J. Brown or Saquon Barkley, which I think is even more pronounced for the Steelers because they don't really have another guy. I mean, they have other guys, Najee and whatever, and Freiermuth or whatever, but they don't have another guy at that level of ability like the Eagles. The Eagles actually probably have 3 because Devontae Smith is really special as well. We could do a deep dive on this, Shek. The Eagles, once again, from top to bottom, they have a ridiculous roster. I I mean, like I feel like people are like, oh, you're biased, dude. They have a top 5 receiver duo, if not the best receiver duo, a top 5 running back, if not the best running back, a top 5 O line, if not the best O line. Goddard's probably a top 5 tight end, although he's hurt right now, and that does hurt them. Hurts is not playing like a top 5 quarterback, but the guy's been an MVP candidate multiple years, and their defense since the bye has been the best statistically. Like that's all the positions. That's all we got in football. So that's also why Sirianni doesn't get as much credit as maybe he should, because people look at them like their offensive line, Shek, they're all monsters. Like I'm around these guys sometimes. None of them are normal, right? Like Lane's the biggest freak of all time. Becton, Landon Dickerson, and Mailata are all over 350-pound like monsters.
Relative, I mean, Ross Tucker's a big dude in person, so when he calls people big guys, then that's really saying
they weigh 100 pounds more than I do.
Yes,
100, 3 of them. They have 3 of them, and then Juergens played tight end and running back at Nebraska before he bulked up to play O-line. Like they invest a lot, and they're that good, which
they always have.
Is one of the issues for Hurts. He has no idea what it's really like, I think. There's all these stats out there. He holds the ball for 4 seconds. I think one of the reasons why he doesn't throw it right away sometimes is because he can. Like these other quarterbacks, they know if you don't throw it right away, you're dead. Hurts, if he doesn't throw it right away, he a lot of times still has time to like look around and then throw it to somebody else.
Okay. So thing, not a thing. Michael Chiklis. He is a thing. He was the thing in one of those Fantastic Four movies.
Yeah.
Is this a thing? I love doing the what if stuff. I contend that the reason Dan Marino didn't win a Super Bowl in his prime or otherwise had less to do with anything about him than it did with the all-time great Don Shula did him a disservice repeatedly in the draft. Our mutual pal, Handsome Hank Hodgson, is the one who first made this point to me. Go through those drafts. It's hard to really support what Shula was thinking there. I think Josh Allen is the 21st century Marino. Style of play and all that obviously makes more plays with its legs than Marino ever did, but similar cats in terms of, Josh Allen has taken care of the ball better this year for the record. I think they're ultimately a little limited in an age of progressive offense by a defensive-minded head coach. And you saw some evidence of that in LA against the Rams with some bad decisions that in the final couple of minutes. How say you?
I think the Sean McDermott thing in Buffalo is real. What's hilarious to me about it is I think I had him ranked as the 23rd best coach going into 2023, and Bills fans were irate, absolutely irate. They hated me for it. The logic was Josh Allen's been arguably the best quarterback in the NFL over the last 5 years. Been to 1 conference championship game. 1. Mahomes goes every year and then goes to Super Bowl and wins it. Even Joe Burrow had been to 2 conference championship games and 1 Super Bowl. For Josh Allen to only go to 1 conference championship game and 0 Super Bowls, that's not good. And by the way, they draft pretty well in Buffalo. Like Brandon Beane does a good job. It's not the players. So the Bills go to 6-6 last year. I had all these screenshots. You were right. Ross Tucker knew. You were right. You're all. Then they come at the end of the season. They go on that run. You're an idiot. See, blah, blah. Earlier this year, you're an idiot. I can't believe you did this. I'll still never forgive you for this. Now, after this game, it's like, maybe you were honest. Like, I'm not that reactionary. I think he's a good coach. I think there are multiple examples every year where he puts the team in a bad position late in games to win. And in the playoffs, like you're going to have 4 games where they're probably going to be one-score games late and close.
And Andy Reid doesn't screw those moments up. Right. It is. I feel bad for Josh Allen preemptively because I think he winds up on Merino Island, he and Lamar Jackson, without a Lombardi trophy. Last thing, let's get Ross Tucker into trouble with other media members for stating his honest opinion. First question on this. Who was better at football, you or Tom Brady?
Tom Brady was a better football player. Yeah.
Okay. Who can chug a beer faster, you or Tom Brady?
Tom Brady can chug a beer faster. I've seen him chug a beer. I'm top 5% in the world.
I know you
He's
are.
top 1% in the world.
Who's a better football color analyst, you or Tom Brady?
I will allow the viewers to decide that one. Viewers like you, Shek, I will let them decide who they prefer. I do think he's doing a good job when I get a chance to watch him, especially for his first year.
Okay, that's very noble of you. Give us as you go out the door. I'm sad that we won't hear you on Army Navy because, like I say, it comes through the radio, through the TV. Otherwise, your passion for the sport, but specifically with those two getting together. Give us a final score. Steelers, Eagles. It does look like George Pickens at best is going to be limited for the black and gold.
Yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth on this one because it feels like the Eagles are due for a loss, but I'm going to say the combo, the no Pickens thing is big. And I'm going to say that this situation in Philly with the talk radio and Brandon Graham, I'm going to say it galvanizes them and that they rally around it. So I'll say the Eagles win the game probably 23-17, something like that. I think the Eagles win ultimately, but would not be surprised if it goes the other way.
Well, listen, he's as good as it gets. The Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Check that out. Some picks available for you already with his guy Fezzik, who's one of the best in the business. Well, keep up the great work, Pally. Let's talk soon.
Always, you do a great job, Shek. Can't wait to get you on my show again. Love the What If series. Incredible. Thanks so much.